Gentlemen, boys and girls, we are watching the Aqualung with the Mokele Moby maybe driving with the thing or something.
I think we broke him.
I am still diseased in the brain, and so we've got Mike and we've got Matt and we've probably got me here and there and everywhere.
Indeed. We are doing the Aquila Enduro race from Mid-Ohio, full sports car layout. And this is the first time I think I'm doing commentary with Mr. Higgs, so welcome to my recording booth, although you've been here before.
Yes, I was a guest on the ACC a couple weeks ago. Hoping to be a regular.
Here we have Mr. James Boutelier, currently running in 13th position, and he's got a personal best first sector there, so we'll see if this improves his position, because this is going to be his last lap to try to do that. So he's got to make no mistakes. Personal best in Sector 2, and heading towards the line. Sector 3 is very, very short. It's really just this carousel turn here. So I think he's going to improve his time significantly. And I am correct. He overtakes Mike Magus for 12th place. So the grid looking like, although not finalized, we've got 20 some odd seconds here still for people to try to put times in. Mike Stopmill, Sean Kenny, Moly, Richard DeRoche, Max Simons, and Lachlan Nichols, Martin Edmonds, Andrew D, Joe Racer, Dominic Dorenberg, pardon me. Shannon Flynn, James Butler, Michael Magus, Douglas DeGroot, and Vic Nash on the grid. Gentlemen, is there anyone you're particularly excited to see perform here at Mid-Ohio?
I want to see Lachlan put everybody in the wall.
There's a lot of wall to work with, actually, so we'll see how that goes.
Lovely day down at Mid-Ohio this afternoon.
I mean, it's always a lovely day at Mid-Ohio. I legitimately don't think I've ever seen a race here look anything but lovely. So, if there's terrible weather in Mid-Ohio, it's not on race day. I guess that's how that works. This is a highly demanding track. We're going to have a fast... Turn 1 is a fast left-hander there. You can kind of just see it in the foreground there. And that will lead into the keyhole turn, which is a tight hairpin. From there, we head to China Beach, then to The Madness, through the S's to Thunder Valley, and then finally I don't think it has a name, turn before Carousel, and then Carousel. And that's the lap. So here we go. We have red lights, and they are out, and we are off. We'll see if Sean Kenny can do anything about Mike Stopmill here into the first corner. Mike Stopmill, of course, basically at this point carrying Byron in his car with him, with the ballast he's carrying.
Hurtful.
Hey, whoa, hey, I didn't say anything that you were big giving. I just said, that's the ballast we're talking about.
Car off in the back there.
Yeah, that looks like it was Vic Nash. Oh no, Douglas DeGroot, pardon me. They're running the same car, and that will be a little bit confusing while they are close together. In the meantime, Stopmill still leads from Kenny and Moly, with Richard DeRoche in 4th, Lachlan Nichols in 5th. So I say Lachlan's the only guy... actually, I say this, and James Butler is currently up to 10th, so he had a pretty good start. He was back in 12th at the start of the race and has made some ground up. And Michael Magus has slipped to the back of the pack after having it off at the keyhole. Here we go through the S's, and this will lead us into Thunder Valley. Richard DeRoche was thinking about making a move there on Moly, and has not gone for it at this time. There is your man, Byron. Lachlan Nichols in 5th place, 4 cars ahead of him. They just got to be put in the wall, right?
Pretty much.
We are looking at probably 1 pit stop here to... 2 pit stops here today. Don't know if anyone made it on 1. Wouldn't be inconceivable. I think the quote over 2 tank limit was like 20 liters, so not impossible to fuel save that. Shannon Flynn makes a move on Dominic Dornenberg, pardon me. So many people in identical cars, this will probably trip me up a couple of times. I'll tell you someone who is not in an identical car. That is Martin Edmonds in the Media Corp racing car. He's looking to overtake That is Andrew D. is fighting with. Oh no, Max Simons, pardon me. As if to prove the fact that, again, guys running the same car. Stopmill's already pulled out to a 3-second advantage. Of course, Stopmill was here with the 3D Speed Series earlier this month for the 3D Speed GT3 race here at Mid-Ohio. He was a race winner there on that occasion and picked up a second place as well. Might have actually been at the end of November, not December, but now that I think about it. But he has great experience with this track. Not that it's really one that you would have an experience advantage at. A lot of people race Mid-Ohio. It's a really solid track. And really tests the car. Lachlan is back up into 5th place, having seen off Max Simons' attack. As Richard DeRoche gets very wide there, and never give Lachlan a sniff up the inside. He will try to take it, but nothing going on this occasion.
Correct.
Further back, that is Dominic Dorenberg, who is putting the pressure on James Butler. Butler, after a really good start, was in on the top 10, has dropped back to 12th place, so all good things must come to an end, I suppose, is the lesson there. As the top about 11 have kind of settled a little bit. There's still good fights going on between Butler, Dornenberg, Michael Magus and Vic Nash swapping positions, and Douglas DeGroot, unfortunately, is on the tail end at the moment.
Sorry, I'm not really saying much. I'm coughing a bunch.
I kind of figured you were having some lung or illness-related difficulties.
Sunday evening, and I'm kind of running out of juice here.
Joe Racer under pressure from Christoph Verstappen in the Tolman Motorsports car. I've told the story of Tolman Motorsports a couple of times. I won't repeat it there. I need new material with these cars. I'll figure something out. But Stopmill's lead kind of just hovering in the 2 to 2.5 second range, maybe 3 seconds at certain points. So Sean Kenny keeping him honest. Moley is in there. Moley's got no ballast, so he's the guy that I'm looking at because this is his first Aquila race. Maybe not most familiar with the cars, but he's a very, very good driver. And he's coming into the series with the 0 ballast, which is going to help him a lot against, kings of ballast, Mike Stopmill and Sean Kenny, the two guys really kind of on their own at the top of the championship tables. And of course, Max Simon's always a little bit of a threat, although right now still in 6th place and dropping off of the top 5, so he doesn't seem to really have the ability today. This is the battle between Butler and Dornenberg. Verstappen getting past Joe Racer. That is for 9th position. And the door shut on the other Lotus car by James Butler. And I think at this point, Douglas DeGroot is out of the race. He is down a lap to everybody, and if memory serves, he had retired at this point. You may continue, Mr. Hicks.
Slight segue into the Tolman Motorsports story. When in that famous race in Monaco in 1984, when Ayrton Senna made his debut with the team. As you may remember, Ayrton Senna famously passed Alain Prost, but they stopped the race a lap before. Stopped the race when he passed him, so by the rules, they go back to the last completed lap, and that's when Prost was in the lead. So Ayrton Senna kind of said, "Oh, the FIA is out to get me," and I won that race. But did you know that Stefan Veloff in another car was actually catching Senna faster than he was catching Prost?
Absolutely. The highly wet Monaco track was going to really favor the naturally aspirated Tyrrells, who had a really, really good car, but a not very powerful engine, basically. So basically, this was the turbo era of F1, when naturally aspirated cars were never gone. We never had a full turbo field, but it came very close. I think Tyrrell actually was the last non-turbo car. And yeah, that was going to work out really, really nicely for Beloff. I must say that there is one thing that I find amusing about that whole thing, although at the moment I'm going to break off here because Mike Magus is battling with Vic Nash on our screen, and we should give them the due diligence of letting the battle fill off. Okay, it looks like it's kind of over.
I don't know, I think Mike Magus is not really that good.
He's not. No, he's terrible.
And he smells like turpentine and horseradish.
The horseradish, yes. Turpentine, I don't know where you're coming from. But anyways, to finish the Monaco story, contact
Butler takes Dornberg out.
That's Dornberg. Yeah, I'm sorry to Dominic, but you picked a car that Joe Racer's been racing the whole season. I will probably confuse you with Joe Racer more than once. I think I have already like 3 times in this video. So there you go. Anyways. The kind of weird thing is that, of course, a lot of Senna fans have always thought that the FIA was trying to help Prost by canceling the race right there. The irony is that if Alain Prost had just finished second place to Senna in that race, which he probably... Well, in reality, the extrapolation here was that Senna's car was actually damaged. Probably wouldn't have lasted the race. Probably
was
would have
about
been
2 or 3 laps from the suspension failure.
Exactly. So probably what we probably would have got if the race had finished normally would be Stefan Beloff winning from Prost. And the irony, of course, is that if Prost had finished second to Beloff or to Senna in a full race length, he would have been champion actually, because the half points awarded, which give him 4.5 points for the race, air quotes, victory, as Shannon Flynn gets past Joe Racer. That is Joe Racer this time. Although he is fighting back and might have a chance at holding off against Shannon Flynn. Another, actually, 80s F1 inspired livery there, the, of course, Lotus John Player Special livery, donned by Joe Racer. But the irony is, of course, the 4.5 points that Prost got for the air quotes win was less than he would have gotten for second place had the race gone full length. So, actually, the FIA kind of screwed Prost out of a title. Despite the... Because at the end of the season, it was a half point that he lost the title to Niki Lauda.
That season, at that race, the Monaco Grand Prix, the race director was Jackie Ickx, I believe.
You are correct.
And kind of a little segue on that, at Spa in the World Sports Car Championship in 1985, Beloff was trying to overtake Jackie Ickx on Eau Rouge and ended up colliding and went to the wall at the top of Eau Rouge and passed away that day. Yeah,
that was, of course, one of many deaths at Spa, and of course many deaths in the 1980s in motorsports. Tons we can mention. I mean, 1982 in F1 alone had 3 fatalities. 2 fatalities and 1 significantly life-altering accident. Didier Pironi, of course, in many ways losing the use of his legs after that accident and losing out on the F1 1982 F1 title. One of the most competitive seasons in F1, but also one of the saddest.
I do agree with that as well.
If memory serves, 11 different drivers won the title to the point where the champion, K.K. Rosberg, only won 1 race.
That was a fateful season, that 1982.
Unfortunately, motorsports has, through the 80s, become more and more safe, and of course, we've only had 1 recent fatality in F1, that of course being Jules Bianchi. Can't really think of anything else particularly recent in that regard. Of course, 1994, San Marino, the double death of Ayrton Senna, to kind of bookend it with Senna's final race, and Roland Ratzenberger.
Senna was seriously messed up by Ratzenberger's death the day before that. He actually had to be consulted even by the doctor who was a good friend of his.
Sid Watkins, of course.
Watkins. And Watkins told him that he didn't have the race, but Senna's like, nope, I have to do this. It's what I do. I race. And that was what a whole about that race was that Senna was accused of Benetton team Michael Schumacher having traction control, launch control.
as well as launch control. The launch control was proven to be there, although no one can actually prove it was used.
When the FAA found out, they're kind of like, oh, how did that get there?
That's the great story time there for Benetton. I think that was suggested Option 13 should be a movie about the launch control in the Benetton in 94, pardon me. Which, of course, Schumacher won the title over Damon Hill at the end of the season.
Incident-filled race.
A lot of people try to take that title away from Schumacher, stating that the cheating and so on should really lessen it. I still see it as one of his most impressive titles, because that Benetton Ford just was not a title-winning car. I mean, I know J.J. Leto, Johnny Herbert, Jos Verstappen, these are three drivers that are not seen as championship caliber, or even, to be honest, like top-shelf, top-tier drivers. That being said, the three of them collectively could do nothing with that car. And it has been proven that they had the exact same, theoretical cheats as Michael. So, still a bad car, even if it was a cheat. Christoph Verstappen has dropped back to 12th place. I noticed that earlier, and I don't know what happened. He was in the top 10, moving up to 11th there over James Butler in the Tolman Motorsports car. So, other than that, there hasn't been a lot of changes in position. We, of course, had that collision earlier between Dornenberg and... It was Butler, wasn't it? I do believe it was Butler. And we had whatever happened with Christoph Verstappen earlier on in the race that has dropped him back.
Hoffman has about a 4.5 second lead at the moment.
Indeed, but I mean, the question here, of course, is going to come down to a lot of pit stops. I'd say until we get at least one round of pit stops in, I don't think we know how this race is going to go. Because the pit stops can be very interesting in these races. We've seen a lot of mistakes with the pit stops. We've seen, of course, drive-through penalties. We have seen some different things. So until you get to that first pit stop, I would say 14 of these drivers could still win the race. Unfortunately, I think Vic Nash, who is 1 minute 26 seconds off the rest of them, probably does not have the pace here today. I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem like he's really going to factor into the equation here too much. Unless he's made a pit stop, but if he has, he's gone probably much too early. Although I must say that the race time counter is...
I just saw that.
Not correct. So that'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. If that kind of fixes itself, or... I'm not sure. I mean, admittedly, it could just be that the hour has been cut off. That could be the case, because, of course, this was a 75-minute race. So it could be that we are... Yeah, there we go. I think that's what it was. It was an hour and, 2 minutes remaining, not 2 minutes.
Didn't you know that Stefan Belloff was Schumacher's favorite driver when he was growing up?
He was pretty much the only 80s German driver to really cheer for, to be honest. There wasn't really much. I mean, you kind of had Jochen Mass as a guy to maybe cheer for, who did really well in sports cars and whatever. But Belloff is definitely... It's kind of like asking a Canadian growing up in, that same time period, to be honest, in the 80s, who's your favorite driver? It's going to be Gilles Villeneuve, pretty much hands down. And Stefan Belloff was in a kind of similar situation to that, in the club of exceedingly fast drivers that never won a world title. Probably most famous in that would be Sterling Moss and, of course, Ronnie Peterson. Dominic Dornenberg dives down the inside of James Butler. Butler seems to have just lost a ton of speed. Because he was fighting with Verstappen. Verstappen has left him for dead, and it looks like Dornenberg just cruised up to him and went right past. I wonder if he's having tire problems. It's a bad sign if you're having tire problems at this point, because we're not even 20 minutes into the race. This is a 75-minute affair. You got to nurse those tires for at least 30 minutes. Well, not quite 30 minutes, but I think a lot of drivers were only looking at probably one pit stop for tires here today, 2 pit stops for fuel, and if you're struggling with tires at this point, that may do you a tremendous disservice in the long run. This is Max Simmons fighting with Lachlan Nichols. We'll keep our eyes peeled on this battle because, of course, and I mean this in no ways offense to these two drivers, but Lachlan and Max do have a history of some incidents. So there's a little bit of extra hot sauce to put on that battle for 5th place.
I think he just needs to put him in the wall.
They're both prone to doing that, so we'll see. Andrew D. putting the pressure on Martin Edmonds. Is this for top Canadian? No, it is not. Richard DeRoche is up there in 4th place, so not top Canadian honors, which is usually where Martin is. It seems like whatever was wrong with Butler is kind of recovered. He's sticking with Dornenberg reasonably well, so whatever the problem was has resolved itself. They are both being caught by Michael Magus, so that might become a three-way dance at some point in the future. I'll tell you who the loneliest man on track, though. It's Richard DeRoche. I'm noting that I think we have a timing glitch going on here. We actually saw this during the live broadcast today from the Intercontinental. There are just some gaps that are randomly going very large and then very short. Wonder if this is perhaps a problem with the dedicated server in relation to the Raceroom patch that was deployed obviously this week with the upgrades for the new cars for GT4, GT3, and of course a new Porsche class, which I'm a little angry about that just wasn't incorporated into the GT2s. It's supposedly somewhere around their pace. But what are you going to do, I suppose, is the answer there. Not really much else to say on the matter. But we had new physics implemented. Nothing to do with these Aquila cars, of course. Although, I don't know, maybe it was my imagination, but they did feel a little more aero-sensitive. But that's probably just my imagination. As the leaders are coming up to, I believe that is Vic Nash, who is about to be lapped. Dominic Dornenberg has lost the spot back to James Butler. So after cruising up to Butler and just absolutely mugging him, he's lost the spot back to the Butler. Lachlan Nichols is falling back, but I believe, if I recall correctly, that is him in the pit lane. He was the first one to make that move.
Looks like he has a drive-through penalty.
Indeed, so you're going to see that a couple of times in this race, unfortunately. And the problem is that on the entry to the Mid-Ohio pit lane, it seems like the white lines are not accurate as to where the track is. Because I was looking at the replay a couple of times and no one was crossing the white line, but they were be giving abusive track limits penalties. So this might be a case where, unfortunately, what you see is not really what you get. And hopefully that can be fixed in the future here in Ohio, as it will make pit stop races a bit of a pain in the ass, because you're going to see about a half dozen of those across this race. As somebody, I think that's just Vic Nash getting out of the way. Yeah, that's Vic Nash. Sean Kenny and Moly going through. James Butler has lost the spot back to Dominic Dornenberg. Lachlan Nichols has rejoined the race in 10th position. Not really much else to update us on here. Shannon Flynn, Joe Racer having a good little scrap. That is over 8th place on track. More likely, though, 9th place, of course, with Lachlan running behind them. 3 Tolman cars in the top 10. Lachlan in for his drive-through penalty. I feel for anyone that got caught in that, but it was something that definitely bit a couple of different people. I do like how the timing gap goes to 91 hours for if you're in the pit. So that's actually nice. We have a visual cue for who's in the pit lane. That's nice. I don't know if that's intentional. Shannon Flynn still putting the pressure on Mr. Joe Racer. Lachlan is back out on track, now running in 14th position. Behind Michael Magus, who it's a fairly large gap between the two, but he might be having some Vietnam post-traumatic stress flashbacks to Lachlan Nichols and the twin rig and Motegi.
Oh.
So we're into that pit lane or pit window. I do believe Lachlan is going on an alternate strategy, though. I don't think we're going to see a massive dive to the pit lane anytime soon. Oh, well, you know what? I say that, and Dominic Dornenberg is in the pits to do his pit stop. Shannon Flynn on the tail of Joe Racer and looking to get through. He's going to get through as Joe gets quite wide through the keyhole, and that's going to put Shannon up into 8th position. Speaking of pit stops, shout out to my buddy Ziggy, who made his ACC ESR debut today and completely messed up his pit stop. So, everybody, remember your bindings for a pit stop.
It's easy. ACC is the kind of gotta know what's going on. Can't really just jump into it.
He didn't jump into it. He was actually quite well prepared. I thought his driving was not fast by any means. Not going to spoil his result, but I thought relatively.
That'll be a fun race to watch.
Thought relatively competent outside of one turn that he kept overshooting, and I will probably drum that into his head over the coming weeks. He has plenty of time to think about what he did, as he is missing the next ESR ACC round because he is going to be away for Christmas holidays. Which means I get to step into the car. Yeah.
Oh, I'll be racing against you on the 29th, I guess, then.
We will not be racing against each other. You're at the sharp end of the field. I will be at the back.
I don't know about that. I haven't raced in a while.
Yeah, I don't think you understand how slow I am at ACC. Don't know why. Even like guys who I generally beat in Raceroom are faster than me at ACC, so...
Yeah, I saw that at Spa last season.
Well, last season at Spa, I was driving with a damaged car most of the race.
Even Stoffmill couldn't handle the wet.
In my defense, the Bentley was not great in the wet there.
I did decently in the wet in my 2-hour ACC race, most in the wet.
No, I think definitely there are definitely cars that can handle it. Mike Magus, by the way, in the pit lane, just to quickly point that out. Well, it was just weird that both me and Stoffmill, there was one particular turn in the Bentley where the back end just did not want to cooperate.
The fast left-hander?
Yes. Could be we had a setup problem. Yeah, Blanchiment. It could just be that we had a bad setup. Like, I may be ascribing a problem to the car that isn't really there.
In the wet, you kind of got to brake a little before the corner, so your back doesn't...
Yeah, it was requiring a lot of braking, to be honest. So, again, whether it was just kind of the Bentley being kind of weak there, or if it was our setup not jiving particularly well. But mind you, we were just running the wet setup, so I can't imagine it was our setup. Maybe a combination.
I was using the aggressive setup, and then just with higher traction control and higher braking.
Oh.
Or ABS.
Well, maybe that would have been safer than the wet setup. Who knows? Shannon Flynn in the pit lane, I do believe. And,
Lachlan Nichols, is he still in the pit lane?
No, it's doing that because Shannon's in the pit lane and Lachlan's behind him.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. See, overtake. And then Dominic's turns into that 91. Yeah. And Dornenberg will also overtake him. There we go.
Wonder who's going to stretch their fuel mileage.
Does look like Vic Nash might be in the pit lane as well, actually. So we might have two cars in the pits, Flynn and Nash.
I think he's been in the pits for a while.
To be honest, with these cars, I don't think you're going to see a lot of people stretching the fuel mileage too much, because these Aquilas actually kind of behave better with the mass of the fuel in them. So this is kind of a car that, to a degree, you didn't want to play the usual game with, where you absolutely hunt down the fuel tank to basically zero, I think you'll see people coming in with more fuel left over still, and taking their services.
I think Byron's dead.
He is quite ill, so we're gonna allow him to be relaxed. So surprisingly enough, Shannon Flynn has rejoined the race behind Mike Magus, which is a little bit strange because Flynn was running borderline top 10, Magus more or less back of the pack. So I wonder if Flynn had problems with his pit stop. Because there couldn't have been much that took terribly long time. Or maybe... theory. Flynn may have taken tires as well as fuel? And it may be that some of the other drivers have not been taking tires. It's the only thing I can really think of. That is Vic Nash being lapped by Mully, who remains in the top 3. So we've seen pit stops from Lachlan Nichols, 11th place, Dominic Dornenberg. Basically, actually, everyone from Lachlan Nichols down has made their pit stop. It's the top 10 that we're waiting to come in. Again, we'll probably see a second pit stop later in the race. It's kind of hard to predict where, because I think a lot of people were making their pit stops less based on fuel for a change and more based on kind of when they wanted fresh tires. Andrew D. still on the tail of Martin Edmonds. This has been a battle that's been going on pretty much the whole race, but nothing really happening at this time.
Punt him.
Don't punt an admin. It's a bad plan. There is no separate treatment for admins when it comes to stewarding. That being said, admins are very likely to report you. So being on your best behavior around them is always a good idea.
Send it up the inside.
Additionally, people you should probably not hit while on track. Rochelle Guerin, daughter of the head steward. It's a bad plan. Additionally, there is just anyone that you know is more likely to make the reports. Mike Stockmill, for example, is really likely to report you if you hit him. So don't do that. Unless you're willing to face the consequences. Mike Magus there falling down a lap, but not really, because of course he's been in for his pit stop, and these guys have not.
Let's be honest, this is pace.
No, he'll be down a lap later. Do not worry. It's just hasn't happened yet. So Andrew D still looking for a way around the car Martin Edmonds there. His CC competition car. Actually, this race was really, really interesting from a pit lane standpoint because there was a lot of different things you could make work here. Do you take tires on both stops? Do you take tires on only one stop? When do you pit? When do you take that fresh set of tires if you're only going to do it once? Because these the Aquilas are relatively kind to their tires. I say this while we're looking at Martin Edmonds, who is perhaps the king of murdering his rubber. So, maybe not for him, but for most people, there wasn't a particularly high tire deg rate. So it leads to a lot of potential options.
I thought we had a slide going there.
No, nice catch by Moley, actually. I think excellent work by him. Man, you'd think Moley would be like a really fun commentary name. It's really not, actually. Looks like somebody is pitted because Nichols is into the top 10.
Oh, there we go. There goes D into the pit lane.
D into the pits. I think it's James Butler has been in for his pit stop, is my guess. Pretty quick one by the looks of the gap, actually. So I would say that he probably has not taken tires on that particular pit stop. Michael Magus misbehaving a little bit under blue flag. Probably should have let Sean Kenny through there a little bit quicker. And next up will be Mr. Mole. See if he's accommodating. Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if he's accommodating or if he just went off the track. But Mr. Mole is through. And Shannon Flynn probably enjoying watching that blue flag display. Again, I'm still trying to figure out what Shannon did in the pit stop because he's dropped a long way back. And I can't really figure out why. Mike Stockmill, drive-through penalty for abuse of track limits. Sean Kenny and Moly Mullion. It's the right-hand side there, the white line closer to the track. That, I think, is where the problem lies. So if anyone at Sector 3 happens to watch this, check your track limits. So all the top three are in the pit lane, and Mike Stockmill has been kind of messed up a little bit by that. Max Simmons has taken the lead in the meantime. Richard DeRoche in the pit lane as well. Martin Edmonds is heading out for another lap, so he hasn't pitted yet. Max Simons hasn't pitted yet. We will see if Christoph Verstappen starts making his way through. Joe Racer still out in third place. As Shannon Flynn looking for a move on Michael Magus. Not going to happen there. He kind of pulled out of the slipstream a little bit too early and hit that wall of air. Verstappen is still out. No, I think Verstappen is actually in the pit lane. I think. 100% sure. But the top four definitely still have to stop. So Simons, Edmonds, Racer, and D are going with the longest first stint.
I think D's already pitted. I could have sworn he went in a few laps ago.
He didn't take service if he did. Because he's overtaken Mike Stockmill. And Stockmill is going to have to come and serve a drive-through penalty. That's going to make things worse. Are we sure it wasn't perhaps another green car? Because, of course, there's a couple. Max Simons drive-through penalty.
I could have sworn we were on board with him when he went to the pits.
It's possible. Max Simons, the latest to follow a drive-through. I just don't think so based on where he is, though.
Then again, I could be entirely wrong.
So we'll say that Martin Edmonds and Joe Racer have not pitted unless they are in the pits now. That's possible. No, Martin I don't think is because he's in the lead. So it looks like of all people, Martin Edmonds is going to go for the longest first stint.
He's not here. We can make fun of him.
I mean, if he was here, I'd make fun of him. Shannon Flynn putting the pressure on Michael Magus. I make fun of myself. No one is immune. Michael Magus in the Red Devil car. That's what I call it anyway. It's not the actual team name. Sean Kenny back out 8th place in behind. Is he behind Molly? Molly has jumped Sean Kenny in the pit lane. So, again, that could be a couple different things. Could be a difference in how much fuel they took on board. Could be one taking tires and one not taking tires. A lot of options there. Could be just a faster pit stop as Shannon Flynn barges through at the carousel. But Mike Magus is having none of it. He's fighting back. And they will probably resolve this heading into the first corner. I imagine Magus has got to cede that position, though.
He's probably used up all his talent by then.
Oh, I got talent there. It's called just put the cow catcher down. So Andrew D is in the lead. I have to think he's not pitted. Not to question your recollection of things, but like I have a hard time thinking that he would be in the lead, having made a pit stop when he was running in, what, 7th or 8th place?
I'm judging myself at this point, so I could be entirely wrong.
So I think Andrew D and Christoph Verstappen still have to pit. Verstappen for sure. Verstappen was down in like 12th place.
Oh, Mike Magus runs out of talent.
Hey, Shannon Flynn putting the door to me. I was thinking about reporting that, but something later on will probably make that a bit of a point. Sean Kenny, moly. This is the battle for the lead, effectively, because Stockmill's come in to make his pit stop and his drive-through penalty. He's dropped out of 5th place. And the top two, we believe, still have to pit. Lachlan Nichols is behind Dornenberg still, so he hasn't made the pace that I thought he would. Because Lachlan in these cars is usually very quick. He's a prototype and open wheel specialist to a degree. Not the fastest in a tin top, but definitely knows his way around the lighter car. Drive-through penalty. Max Simmons speeding in the pit lane while serving a drive-through penalty. So nice work.
I think that would have only been funnier if the drive-through was for speeding in the pit lane and he got dinged for speeding in the pit lane while serving that drive-through.
We've seen that. We've seen that. We
had a race where Lachlan Nichols.
No, Lachlan doesn't get drive-throughs for that. Lachlan gets drive-throughs for hitting people in the bumper. I don't really know if Dornenberg should be having this aggressive posture with Lachlan. And that's not a, whatever. It's that Lachlan has caught and passed him with ease. I'm just wondering if, really trying to force the issue is going to help him in the long run of this race. It's clear that his race is not with Lachlan Nichols. So the long run did not favor Martin Edmonds. He's dropped back to 10th place. He's lost out to James Butler. And to be honest, Richard DeRoche appears to have had a really terrible pit stop. He's back in 8th place. He was, of course, 4th on track. He's lost positions to Dornenberg, Nichols, for sure. And at this rate, I assume he's going to lose a spot to Andrew D. So not a good run for Richard DeRoche in the pits. There he is in the background of Dominic Dornenberg, so he's doing his best to make the ground up, and that's a late lunge into the keyhole. Very nice.
Thankfully, Dornenberg saw it coming and checked his mirror.
Indeed. Credit to Dornenberg, yeah. A less aware driver may have taken DeRoche out there. So just good racing from both men. And Richard's going for 2 and 2 turns. Can he get Lachlan Nichols? He can!
Oh... Dornenberg into the back of Lachlan Nichols.
I think that's okay. Lachlan's going to maintain the position. So it's not. Lachlan has hit something at some point, though. You can see his headlight is out. Another guy who's come off kind of badly in the pit stop sequence, Joe Racer, down in 13th place. I don't know what happened there.
Cocaine.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug. In the meantime, Andrew D. and Verstappen still out there running 1-2. Again, we did have that theory that D may have pitted, but it seems unlikely at this point. Moly, who is the effective race leader, trying to get past. I imagine that is Verstappen. There are a couple of the Tolman cars. Yep, it is Christoph. So he is through at the keyhole there. So, at this point, if I'm Christoph, I'm getting into the damn pits at this point, because you're in the midst of the fast cars coming through, and it's not about being considerate, it's about the fact that fighting with these cars is going to slow you down. You're probably better off trying to get into some free air and race the people that you are, in fact, racing, as opposed to the race leaders. But it will get him some time here while they're passing him. So, he's on camera. The sponsors will like that.
Need to be on camera even more if you're the last car on the track.
Sean Kenny is through into 3rd place. And the next man to take a crack at Verstappen will be Mike Stockmill. Oh, there goes Verstappen into the pit lane. So he is taking my advice and getting a pit stop in to avoid the worst of the slowdown. Probably a lap earlier would have been optimal, but he is in now. I'm thinking that perhaps D and Verstappen actually can do the one stopper, because they've gone at this point 42 minutes into the race. Presumably they can fuel up and be good to go for the remainder. There is Lachlan Nichols, who is just getting dropped like a bad habit by Richard DeRoche. Richard is on a freaking mission right now. I don't know if this is a strategic hotbed for him that he has to go through, but that pit stop... I am thinking that his pit stop dropped him a couple spots because he had to have taken tires, and that would also explain why he is rapidly carving through the field on fresh rubber. As Joe Racer is catching Michael Magus, and this is a battle that will be very familiar to our viewers, of course. Joe Racer and Michael Magus, a couple of solid battles in the 3D Speed Series, as well as the ESR Upper Class Academy. Two drivers who are very familiar with one another.
Physically and emotionally.
You guys should get a room.
I mean, we don't need a room. We do this publicly, baby.
Giggity.
We're all about that exhibition.
Say no more.
Lachlan Nichols into the pit lane again, so that'll be his second and, in theory, final stop of the day. Mind you, it's Lachlan, so the chances that he just rips his front end off at some point is always on the table. We will see where he rejoins the pack. Apparently, it's going to be behind Michael Magus and Joe Racer. By the looks of it, they are coming through. Indeed, it is correct. Verstappen has dropped a long way, so not really sure if the super long run has really worked out for him. He's back in 13th place right now, and that is, for all intents and purposes, last place, because Vic Nash is down a couple laps, and we've lost Max Simons at some point, probably after the second drive-through penalty. It was incurred.
Because he probably just drove right through the wall and tried to get to the next race.
So Joe Racer, Michael Magus battling on the fringes of the top 10, although not really the position they're fighting for, because in theory they both have to make another pit stop, and that is not the case for Lachlan Nichols behind them. Possibly Christoph Verstappen also good to go to the end, so they will be coming fast, and of course Racer and Magus pitted. You know what? Racer may be fueled to the end. I don't know. He did go really long. Magus did not. That would suggest that he will have to make a pit stop as Racer zips through into 10th position. And in fact, there goes Michael Magus into the pit lane to make his second pit stop of the day.
And hopefully final.
It will be the first of 42 pit stops.
Andrew D is still out there.
So maybe he pitted and we didn't notice, or he's really good.
Maybe he pitted super early and I just wasn't thinking about it in my calculations of position. I don't know. He was fighting with Martin Edmonds and now he's not. That's all I know. There he is in the lead. Actually coming up to Lachlan Nichols to lap him. So, no idea what's going on with Andrew D. He may legitimately be in the lead of this race. I do not know.
I think he's making fuel at this point.
I don't think you could go this long on a single tank of gas, though. Without extreme fuel saving, which I don't think you'd really. There we are. Speaking of the pit lane,
I saw that coming.
Hit the wrong button in the entry. I hit the request pit button basically twice instead of the pit lane speed limiter.
I saw his entry into the pit lane. I'm like, oh, he's gonna get track limits, but. No,
I avoided the track limits, actually, because at this point, we of course, over comms had heard the problem. We didn't know what the problem was, but we did know that you had to be super, super careful entering the pit lane, and as such I was, but this led to me going about 81 in the pits, so about 1 kilometer over the pit lane speed limiter. Thank you very much. Martin Edmonds overtakes James Butler into 6th position.
Looks very easy.
Yeah, Butler, I think, is on an alternate strategy, and I think his tires may be slightly dead. That's, I think, what that is. Butler made up a lot of ground in the pit stops, and I'm left to believe that that's, you know, a non-tire. Andrew D in the pits! As that is either Dornenberg or Racer rejoining. I think it's Dornenberg. Joining the track. His pit stop.
Good.
So, cars that, in theory, have a pit stop to make. Moly Moly Moly, Sean Kenny, Mike Stoffmill, Richard DeRoche, possibly Martin Edmonds, although he did go very far. We probably have a pit stop still due from Shannon Flynn. And we probably have one from Joe Racer. As well as... I think Shannon Flynn is actually in the pits. So, Shannon Flynn taking care of that. And possibly Verstappen are the cars yet to stop. And meaning no offense at all, because I think he's a sound driver and everything, but I have no idea what's going on with Vic Nash at this point. He may have stuff to make. Yep, Flynn is definitely in the pits, actually, so Flynn is making his last pit stop at this point. And retires from the race. That was what I meant when I said I'm not reporting him for the contact we had, because he just ended up with a DNF, and I have no idea why. So Moly 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 has retaken the lead, theoretically with perhaps a pit stop still to make. Behind him is Sean Kenny. Behind him is Mike Stoppmill, or actually Richard DeRoche has overtaken Mike Stoppmill. So Stoppmill's in the pits for his second pit stop. And Stoppmill came in at about the same time as Kenny and Mole. So I have a hard time thinking that they don't have a pit stop still to be made. But I will, of course, bow if my learned colleagues believe that is not the case.
I think you're correct.
Because Mike Stoppmill is fantastic at driving to a fuel number. If you pit at the same time as him, I have a hard time believing that you're going to make less pit stops.
Witchcraft.
So Richard DeRoche and Martin Edmonds up to 3rd and 4th. DeRoche, I'm confident, has to pit. Edmonds may not. He went super late into that first run, so he might be doing a one-stopper. Joe Racer, Christoph Verstappen, perhaps. James Butler is in the pit lane, so that's his second and final stop. Hopefully this time he took tires, because my theory was that he didn't take tires at the first stop and was running on some pretty ineffective rubber. Which explains why he was just absolutely destroyed and mugged on that straightaway about 2 laps ago.
By my calculation, we should see these guys in for pit stops in the next few laps or so.
I imagine this lap, actually, I would think. Unless they're really... I mean, I guess it depends on what you want to do here. Again, this is a track that isn't terribly, like, 2-stoppage. Basically, this is an 80 liter, Jesus, fuel tank. And the calculation works out to being about a 180 race. So basically what you're taking in is 100 liters over 2 pit stops, in a nutshell. So there's a lot of flexibility where you can do that. So it's possible they may go deep. But we'll see. They are coming up to the pit lane now. And it is not this time. They will continue on. Up ahead of them is Lachlan Nichols, who is fueled to the end and currently running in 9th position. Also, when I say fueled to the end, I am making an assumption. Do not know for a fact, but he has made 2 pit stops. And unless he has severely botched his fuel calculations, there should be no need for a 3rd one. Looks like Vic Nash is in the pits, so that'd be probably his final pit stop as well. And he rejoins, still in 13th and last of the runners. We have lost Shannon Flynn, Max Simmons, and Douglas DeGroot. A bit of a small grid today because, of course, there are some drivers struggling with the update. Specifically, certain direct drive wheels are not yet functioning in Raceroom. And on top of that, there are some VR issues. So, some people missing for those reasons.
That was fantastic. Not this lap either, I don't see.
I don't know. If I'm with Sean Kenny, I would have been thinking about it. Just not lapping Lachlan Nichols and just getting in the pit lane. But I guess he got through fairly effectively, and he's still putting the pressure on Lowell. I guess the question to you, Mr. Higgs, is... So we've got these 2 drivers out here. I imagine, they pitted together, so they probably have a rough idea that they both probably have to make a pit stop again. Or they're really confident that no one has to pit because they're on fuel mileage. And assuming the other guys... Ooh, Sean Kenny off the track. Do you go for the undercut or the overcut here?
Well, it depends. If I know I have the pace, if I'm similar in pace to him, I will try to do the undercut, or if I'm lacking in pace. Really depends on what they think their pace is in regards to the other guy.
They've been quite close together the whole race. I would have to say they probably think of each other as being pretty close. We got a fastest lap there of Sean Kenny of 27.5. If we can get a shot of Mole. This, of course, is the other danger man, though. How does Mike Stoffmill factor into these equations?
Stoffmill's taking a 2nd pit stop, right?
Correct. He is fuel to the end.
Where is he's going? Nope, not this lap.
Not this lap from Mr. Mole. Mole 27.9. So Kenny has got the fastest lap. Kenny's in the pits, I think. Sean Kenny in the pit lane.
I don't think so.
No. He's dropped behind.
I think he just lost some ground there.
Yeah, he's behind Lachlan Nichols now, so I think Sean Kenny probably had an off-track excursion there, which kind of makes this not as interesting as it once was.
I'd just say go in the pits, take a pit stop now.
He's behind Lachlan again. I'd get in the pits, personally. Also, I mean, and the thing we're not really able to say here, because the timing is slightly glitched and not accurate. Martin Edmonds, for example, is not 1 minute behind Richard DeRoche. That is not actually the case. How the gap to Stoffmill is going, because, of course, whenever you're talking about fighting for a win, Mike Stoffmill is a factor in that equation. He is a variable. He is being held up right now by Martin Edmonds, though, so that's working to the top two's advantage, unless Stoffmill can get through on Edmonds. Also, a slight question is, if you're Edmonds, are you really interested in fighting for this spot? Because we think Edmonds is either going to need another pit stop or going to need to fuel save. And if it's the former, there's not really a point in fighting with Stoffmill. And if it's the latter, you don't want to fight with Stoffmill because that's going to exasperate your fuel issues.
All I really have to do is sit in front of him, really.
As long as you're not losing ground, because obviously, drive through for abuse of track limits, Richard DeRoche.
Oh no, that's gonna really hurt them.
Richard was possibly looking at fighting for a podium in this one too. He's making his final pit stop, and that is gonna hurt him. That's gonna remove him from the equation. At least as far as the podium is concerned. If I'm Martin Edmonds here, I'm probably interested in getting out of the way of Mike Stoffmill. There's Richard rejoining from the pit lane. And sadly, he will have a drive-through penalty to serve. This is the battle for third on track, and just not really a battle in the great scheme of things. Stopmill gets the job done at the keyhole. Nice camera view there, actually. I like that. Which, ironically, Martin Edmonds is the recorder of this race and probably was fiddling with the camera while fighting with Mike Stopmill. That's not the brightest idea in the world. So, still to pit, in theory. Moly, Sean Kenny, Martin Edmonds is kind of a maybe, Joe Racer. That's about it, I think. I think those are the last people. I think everyone else is good to go. Ready to finish this race. Richard's got to serve a drive-through penalty, so he's not done with the pits, but he is done with pit stopping.
Didn't he just take a pit stop?
Yeah,
or was that his drive-through?
He picked up the drive-through penalty.
Ah, okay.
Off of the pit stop, so he'll be in for the drive-through, but not for service. Edmonds going around again, so it's looking more and more likely that Martin Edmonds might be able to string this to a one-stop, or he's made a second stop and we've not seen it, but it doesn't really make sense with his current position that he has. Get a lovely shot of the Mid-Ohio trackside here. Some flags being flown up on the stands. Up on the hill there. And there is Mr. Mole, the race leader. And at this point, Sean Kenny is nowhere in sight. So I'd say your race winner is either going to be Mr. Mole or Mike Stopmill if Mr. Mole has to make a pit stop. That might bring the Flying Dutchman back into play.
That is a good idea.
And of course, I guess you could say Sean Kenny still could win this race if Mole has to pit and Kenny doesn't. That would, I suppose, be the third option at this point. Looks like no, that's just the timing fucking with me. I was going to say the gap between Edmonds and DeRoche had grown significantly, and I was thinking DeRoche had taken his drive-through. It's back to like 4 seconds again, so I don't think he has. Really kind of annoyed with this glitch timing, to be honest.
It's not making it easy.
It's making me think things are happening that are not really happening. Okay, there we are. Richard is in the pits. He is doing his drive-through. Okay. And that's going to cost him a spot to Joe Racer. Now, in fairness, Joe Racer has another pit stop to make. I will give the slight spoiler there that I am currently racing with him on track under the most bizarre blue flags I think you'll ever see, because it's two cars, one that is, quote, lapping the other, but they're running the exact same pace, and it's really awkward.
Oh, no, that's not good.
Because I'm getting blue flagged, but then the blue flag goes away, like, before the corner is over, and it's like, man, should I let him through, or just keep driving? Sean Kenny coming up to... Man, Sean Kenny is still not lapped Lachlan Nichols. Like, that's a significant problem, and that's what's letting this man, Mr. Mole, really get away. Drive-through penalty, abuse of track limits for Martin Edmonds, so he had to make a second pit stop, and he's probably regretting it right now.
That was quick.
The other option, I guess, would be he violated track limits somewhere else, but I don't think anyone did. I think it's really just that pit lane problem, and yes, indeed, he is in the pits, so there we go. Gets him out of the way of Richard DeRoche. Speaking of Richard, there he is. He is cruising up to Mike Magus and Joe Racer. Mike Magus will get the blue flags. Joe Racer is in a bit of a weird position, has another pit stop to make, and again, kind of that classic problem of Do you fight DeRoche or do you not? To be honest, I think Richard may leave them with no real option on the matter because after that drive-through penalty, I imagine Richard's got just a hint of the red mist going on and really isn't in the mood for any bullshit. So Martin has rejoined the track in 8th place. This is probably 7th effectively with Racer still needing to make a pit stop. That being said, he has a drive-through. And if I really had a good idea of what the gap between him and Lachlan Nichols was, I could say whether that's going to cost him a spot. But I really don't. Back to Richard DeRoche, coming up to Michael Magus, who will be probably not getting the blue flags yet. The blue flags appear to be about a 1.5 second gap. I think that's a little larger than that right there.
I know, it can be annoying when people don't obey blue flags when you know you're faster than them.
It's a bit of a weird thing in sim racing, unfortunately, is that everyone has a different idea of what the blue flag is supposed to look like. Not in the sense of, obviously, it's a blue flag, but not talking about the physical appearance. But there are some drivers who really expect a lap car to act in a extremely deferential manner. But you get other drivers who are like, no, just hold your line, I'll go around you. And you're kind of guessing sometimes as to what kind of driver you got. And Martin Edmonds gets a speeding in the pit lane penalty. I think that pretty much puts to rest whether he can fight with Lachlan Nichols, because he is actually behind Dominic Dorenberg as well, actually, now. I didn't think that would happen.
That adds a little salt into the wound, doesn't it?
Definitely a little bit. Getting really close to the end here, and we still haven't seen Mole and Kenny make a second pit stop. Or we may have seen Kenny, I don't know. The gap is doing weird things once again there.
No, I think if he made a pit stop, he'd be behind Stockmill at this point.
Potentially, yes.
There's our race leader.
So I'm wondering if that explains Sean Kenny's lack of pace. Is he in full-on fuel-saving mode to try to make it a one-stopper? Here comes Richard DeRoche coming up to Michael Magus in the red and black car. He is getting blue flags at this point. Joe Racer will be a battle for position. And there is Mole going again. So no pit stop from Mr. Mole yet.
That might put him underground at some point.
It might. It also might put him at the top of the podium, which is a very uncustomary position for a Mole. And there, Mr. Magus gets out of the way of Mr. DeRoche heading into Thunder Valley. One of the best names for a turn, I think, on any circuit.
Can confirm.
There we get a large shot of the China Beach there. Could be wrong on that, but is there another sand trap that has its own name?
I don't know.
But yeah, China Beach here at Mid-Ohio is a gravel / sand trap that actually is actually named on the track map. So go figure. I'm not sure if I can think of any other tracks where that is the case.
I'll have to come back to you on that.
Originally, for the longest time, I thought it was the name of the turn. But as far as I can ascertain, it's not. Mole is in the pits! So this is perhaps the most important pit stop of the race, and I'm not really sure why you would pit with 8.5 minutes to go. Or 9 minutes to go.
Maybe he had to.
I mean, I guess at this point, if you finally have realized you can't make it, sure, but I would not leave the calculations that fine, in my personal preference. But that's just me. That doesn't make it wrong. So Mole is back out, looking for Sean Kenny. That's Martin Edmonds moving through. Martin is down a lap, so that doesn't matter. Mola's back out in the lead. I think that was Sean Kenny in the background. So Sean, if you're out there and you did a one-stop strategy on this one, it didn't work, buddy. It did not work. The fuel saving robbed you of way too much pace, it seems. Yeah, I think that is Sean Kenny, fourth car back there. That's Martin Edmonds and that's James Butler between them. They are both lapped cars. But I believe that is Sean Kenny in the white car in third. And the gap I'm being shown, for what that's worth, would indicate that that is the case. I didn't remember that Joe Racer pitted this late, so again, he is not in fourth place. He has to pit. Richard DeRoche is the man who is effectively in fourth position. So Joe Racer, another one leaving it exceedingly late here to make that final pit stop. Just letting you enjoy the sounds of the Aquila CR1 car.
Makes me moist.
Might have an overtake in the mix here. And Sean Kenny's gap is acting up again, but that is him back there, kind of in the same spot. Mike Stopmill also in shot, so... Can Stopmill really make up that level of ground with 6.5 minutes to go? I don't know. I think we are seeing Mr. Mole take victory here. Joe Racer going again. Man, Joe, I unless you're trying to make the one-stop work at this point, I don't think he was, based on our conversation after the race, leaving this pit stop really quite too late. And see, I have talent. I'm keeping up with the battle for fourth place.
Or they're holding each other up.
I have some speed.
But not when it counts.
Sometimes when it counts, but sometimes not. So I think this is the lap we'll see Joe Racer drop into the pit lane. Can't imagine he pits within the last 5 minutes. That's it's at some point you got to realize when you got to pit.
That is ghastly.
James Butler is out of Sean Kenny's way now. So that is Martin Edmonds separating first and second place. There he is. Joe's in the pit. We'll see where he comes out. We don't have the most reliable of timing to predict this, but we'll see where he comes out. The answer is going to be for sure behind Christoph Verstappen, who's cruising through right now. That is Andrew D up ahead of him. So that would put Racer in 7th place. Best case. Hey, yep, he's trotting out of the pits. Obviously a quick pit stop just for fuel. Doesn't look like he took tires. And he does, in fact, rejoin in 7th position. Things have really not worked out for Lachlan Nichols here today. 8th place is not a bad place to be, but for a guy who is fighting for a definitive chance at a top 5, not great. Not great. All right, so Sean Kenny can now see the back of Mr. Mole. There are no lapped cars between them, finally. And of course, the man who probably is ruining this day is Martin Edmonds, who's in 10th place. And definitely had a chance for more had he not picked up 2 drive-through penalties.
But he's still in front of Michael Magus.
He is. He is. In fairness, I also picked up drive-through penalties. In fact, who has not picked up a drive-through penalty? It's probably a shorter list than who has. Mole has not. Kenny has not. Andrew D has not. Verstreppen has not. Racer has not. Dornenberg has not. And Butler has not. And Vic Nash. So it's about 50-50, to be honest, of the remaining 13 cars as to who's gotten drive-through. Five drivers that are still running have received drive-through penalties. 6 in total, as Max Simons got drive-throughs before his retirement. And for the most part, for the same thing. Mostly just that track limit abuse on the way into the pits.
And speeding in the pit lane when you're going to serve it.
Also, a trio of speeding in the pit lane penalties. Myself, Max Simons, and Martin Evans. There is the man who presumably will be taking the victory. He should be good. Shouldn't need a pit stop. Went with the 2-stop strategy. The only people who might have done a 1-stopper are Sean Kenny, and Andrew D were very confused as to what his pit stop strategy was. So
we have no clue.
Those are the two that might have made the one work. I'll have to check the log file.
We're professionals here.
Once we're done. I didn't want to spoil too much. I mean, I was in this race. I wanted to be as unspoiled as I could be.
What? Michael Mangus got a drive-through penalty? No.
No, never. That hardly ever happens. Actually, since there's not a ton happening now, I'm going to see if Mr. Kenny, in fact, made a 1-stopper. Feel free to scream if anything important happens, and fill some time here.
Race car sold backwards is race car.
It is, as is Taco Cat.
My life's a lie. Stay woke, everybody.
Is your life cake?
No. That would involve happiness. About 10 seconds to go in this race. Top 3 is Mole Mole Mole.
Sean Kenny did in fact.
Sean
Kenny did in fact do only 1 pit stop.
Well, that didn't really work for him.
I mean, he took 2nd place, but it does feel like it wasn't optimal.
I forgot where they all started. Did Sean Kenny started 2nd, didn't he?
He did. Behind Mike Stockmill and ahead of Mr. Muller.
And takes the checkered flag.
Indeed. So it is going to be Mr. Mole from Sean Kenny and Mike Stockmill on the podium. An odd sight. Mike Stockmill not on the top step of the podium. Christopher Streppen making a late surge here, going after Andrew D. Hasn't made it work yet. I'm going to actually really recheck those laps because I think I was maybe looking. I pulled off stop mills and I noticed that the 2nd pit stop was really short. So it's possible that we just completely missed Kenny's 2nd pit stop.
That's quite possible.
Sean, if you wasted a win by trying to go for a 1-stopper again, I am going to give you a hard time. But we are going to figure this out. We're going to get the detectives out.
Who had no ballast today?
Mole.
Worked out well for him.
Was the big one that didn't have ballast anyways. So everyone's pretty much wrapping up here. Not much that's going to happen, I think, here the last bit. I think also Lachlan might be and Dornenberg might be the last two to actually finish, because I think everyone else is lapped. There we go. I am correct on that. Moly wins. Sean Kenny with the fastest lap. Mike Stoffmill third. Richard Roche, Andrew D, Christopher Streppin, Joe Racer, Lachlan Nichols, Dominic Dornenberg. Welcome back, Dominic. You've been away a while. Happy to have you. And Martin Edmonds, your top 10 here today. All right, so here we go. Is there a way? Here's the problem with Race App. There's no like just column that says how many pit stops you made. That would be handy.
Hint, add it.
So let's see here. Looking for pit stops by Sean Kenny. He has a really long lap 43, which could have been his second pit stop. A splash and dash. He did a 149 there. So I'm going to be charitable. I'm going to say that he did in fact do 2 pit stops and just could not bring the pace home on
well
this
done.
day. And the other question was, of course, Andrew D. So let's have a quick look at him. Andrew D pit stops. Andrew D. Looks like he pitted on lap 22. Potentially did a 150.7, which is either a really bad lap or that was a pit stop. And he did a definite pit stop on lap 32, 220. He did a super short middle stint. That was what screwed us up. Like he did like a 10 lap second stint.
That's weird.
It's a bit weird. Could be that he didn't take tires at the first stop. Just did a quick one just to bring the tires or to bring the fuel into play. Came in, got the last fuel, got the tire swap done, and headed back. So a quick update on the standings. Not that there's a tremendous amount happening. We've got Mike Stoffmill leading the championship with 700 points. He is the champion of this season. Sean Kenny, 606 in second place. He's, I think, entirely safe there as well. Not mathematically safe. He could still be overtaken by Richard DeRoche, but it's a pretty solid deal. Richard DeRoche is in a very close battle, though, with 521 to Christopher Streppin's 518 and 512 for Martin Edmonds. Rounding off the top 10, we have Max Simmons, Wayne Hutchinson, Joe Racer, Andrew D, and Lachlan Nichols. And the division leaders are, of course, Stoffmill, Joe Racer, and Vic Nash. Any thoughts to finish this up here, Mr. Byron or Mr. Higgs?
I ran out of gas before anybody else on the track.
You did, but it is entirely understandable.
We had a few battles that kind of fizzled out towards the end, but the top 2 were pretty much battling the whole race there.
Not towards the end, and it looks like it was Sean Kenny pitting before Mr. Mole that did it in. We completely missed if Kenny did pit, or if he just had a really terrible lap. So Sean, you want to confirm?
We're great commentators here, guys.
I can totally go. Well, I mean, if it's missed, it's missed. I mean, I've seen professional commentators not know if someone needs to make a pit stop. So we're not entirely in bad company. Anyways, this is Michael Magus signing out, and for my co-commentators, Matthew Higgs.
I'm gonna say goodnight to you all.
And Byron Dirksen, who probably needs to get to bed.
He's dead.
And I believe his silence proves that fact.